Continuing Louisiana versus all y'all's look around the state at some of the top high school programs with this fast approaching 2024 season. We're looking at the Baton Rouge area today with Robin Fambrough of The Advocate, who is covered obviously the Baton Rouge area and covered high school sports in the state of Louisiana, as well as anyone for a long time now. And so with one of the top areas in the state and a lot of state championship hopefuls, very excited to chat with Robin. And Robin, as always, thanks so much for your time and your information and everything.
No problem. Always glad to help out.
So, I mean, jumping right into it with the 5As on down to 1A, 5A, we'll start with that 4-5A district that had two teams that we were watching in December in the Dome, a state champion in Catholic and a state runner-up in Zachary High. And I know both will expect to be contenders again this year. And that district has continued to look stronger the past couple of years with Central ascending, and you've got Liberty, Scotlandville, and Woodlawn in that group. Looking at that group of 6 teams starting with the Bears and Broncos, what's your outlook for that group and what you're watching from 4-5A?
I think it's going to be interesting to see how it develops because, obviously Catholic and Zachary, looking at them are quite frankly no-brainers because you expect them to be good. Both are established programs, and we all expect them to be there at the end of the year or late in the playoffs. There's no reason to think that won't be the case. Now, it's going to be a different look. It's like I told somebody the other day, there's no 6'7" Trades Green for Zachary to throw to this year. But trust me, they have plenty of targets. I saw him in 7-on-7. And Caleb Gonzalez is a dynamic quarterback. Now, he doesn't look anything like some of the blue-chip quarterbacks we've had in the past, but he's very effective. He can run the ball. I liked his touch on the ball when I saw him this summer. He has a good knack for finding receivers, and on that day, he didn't actually have the first-team guys there because several of them were at camps and doing other things, and that was the day that they had Catholic out there, St. Aug, and Carr for a little 7-on-7. So he afforded himself very well. And, they have some holes they're going to fill, but like I told somebody the other day, I said, Zachary expects to win. This is a program. It's truly next man up. And it's the same thing at Catholic. Now, there you have a 4-year starter, Daniel Beal, who's gone as your quarterback. But, they had Baylor Graves and Hunter Goldsmith that they alternated during the 7-on-7. They've got other weapons they can use. The defense with the Bradford brothers will be a thing to watch. And then, of course, their offensive lineman, Irv Smith, is already committed to Louisiana Tech. There's no reason to think they won't succeed. And, I said, yeah, but with a new quarterback. And I said, we got to understand, they have some targets and they, again, afforded themselves very well that time I saw them this summer. They've got Amari Clayton. They've got Cohen LeBlanc. They've got guys in their receiver corps who already have college scholarship offers. So that's the kind of guys that can help your quarterback grow into a role as a starter. The rest of the district's going to be fun too. Scotlandville has one of the more intriguing athletes in Frizzell Shepherd, and it looks like they're kind of getting their footing and getting to where they need to be. Liberty will be interesting with Andy Boone, the new coach there, who is has made a reputation. He doesn't pass, he doesn't punt, he doesn't kick. So it worked very, very well at a couple of his other stops, and they see it as a way to forge some competitiveness. Central is the one that probably fits closer to the mold that you're talking about. I expect them to rebuild. You got Jackson Furman back at quarterback, and he's committed to Nichols. Everybody knows about DK Mays, the edge rusher who's committed to Houston. But they've got other guys. I saw them play last year. Yeah, they graduated some, but, DK's brother, KD, is a pretty good player of a linebacker. Now, physically, they're not very similar. But, again, you're looking at a situation where you're in a program. The team that's going to be intriguing to watch will be Woodlawn in the mix with the new coach in Scott Pellegrin. He's brought in a good staff around him. And, they have some talent there that remains. Of course, now you're going to be breaking in a new quarterback since Mr. Brownfield moved on to Miami Edison. But it looks like, there's a degree of excitement there. They're ready to jump into this season and see what happens.
Yeah, it'll be fun for sure. As you mentioned, as many eyes as will be on Catholic and Zachary. Central showed last year that they are on their way. I mean, ascending into one of the top teams in the state, and we've seen some flashes from some of those other programs. So looking forward to 4-5A for sure. And in 5-5A, you have a Dutchtown team that made its deepest run in school history this past year, and a 5-5A group with the Livingston Parish and Ascension Parish teams that is consistently competitive, and each can kind of take their shots at one another on any given Friday night. And so that group is Denham Springs, Dutchtown, East Ascension, Live Oak, Sanamaw, and Walker. What's kind of the outlook from those teams, just east of Baton Rouge in 2024?
Well, what might surprise some people, it didn't necessarily surprise me. Walker, of course, made it to the quarterfinals for the first time in school history. And I send out a little questionnaire where coaches, they generally don't rank their own teams. They rank who they pick as the preseason choice to be the winner. And Walker was the choice. And, you think about it, they've got Troy Sylvie, the quarterback, who was solid last year, also a very good basketball player. You have Caden Jones out there, and Carly and Joseph is a good receiver for them, who basically kind of blossomed during basketball season too. He was a basketball MVP, kind of surprised everybody. And sometimes when a guy has a breakout year like that in one sport, it leads to things in other sports. So that's going to be a lot to shoulder. They're going to have certainly a lot of competition there. I mean, like you said, all of those other teams are very, very competitive. Keeping in mind, you got a new coach in Brock Mathern at East Ascension. Be interesting to see how that goes. Everybody knows about Bryson Martinez, the line commit, but you're going to see an interesting kind of deal there to see what they run offensively and defensively. I'm kind of curious about the offensive set and just see what they do with the athletes and play with them. Sanamaw returns 57 lettermen and a number of starters, and they're just always solid from top to bottom. You've got Cooper Babin back at quarterback, and some great players who are kind of dynamic playmakers there. We don't know as much about Dutchtown this year, although they do have Josh Lewis, the Missouri commitment, and they have a receiver, Andrew Fields, is committed to Northwestern State. But you're, looking at some new players in other positions. I think Lakedron Harvey at running back could be a breakout player. He's got a sprinter speed. Saw that. I think he picked up a Power 5 offer the other day, if I'm not mistaken. Miami.
Yeah, he's had a nice summer.
He's had a nice summer. And then they may be actually looking to throw the ball a little more this year, which would be interesting, which we have never really seen of Dutchtown very much over the years. Denham Springs kind of took a little bit of a step back after the quarterfinal appearance the year before. But, they have Jerry Horn, the quarterback, back. They've got a couple of playmakers in the Goldmans. And they're going to kind of move guys, I think, all around the field. They always have decent size on the line, solid on defense. Got a new OC this year. It'll be interesting to see how they shuffle all those pieces and put them together. Live Oak also has a new coach, and he's going to coach. Leggett was a head coach at St. Thomas Aquinas, and they've got some guys who are up and coming too. But it'll also be interesting to see. It may take them the pre-district schedule to kind of figure out where everybody goes as a new coaching staff and see what happens from there.
Yeah, they're going to be a lot of fun to me to watch for the next couple of years with all of those, underclassmen they're on the rise with that new coaching staff. So keep an eye on them for the years to come for folks. In 4A, you have that really deep in terms of numbers 6-4A district where Bel Air, Broadmoor, Bruley, Estruma, who is, come back on under Sid Edwards, McKinley, Plaquemine, St. Michael, Tara, and Westfell. That's another district that the last few years has been really feisty and has the ability to see some interesting matchups on given Friday nights that can surprise some folks with some outcomes here and there.
Oh, they were good last year. I mean, that was probably one of the more fun districts to follow last year because, before the argument was you really only had one or two teams to look at, and you had a little bit more interplay. Struma made it a whole lot more interesting with that, but also St. Michael. And, they've picked up a quarterback in Camel who moved from McKinley to St. Michael. That's going to be interesting. He was a dynamic playmaker last year. And, Plaquemine is consistently the pick to win the district, and you can understand why. I think most people don't believe it. But overall, they probably have maybe as many or more college signees in the last 10 to 15 years as Catholic. And most people don't realize that. They have, 3 or 4 guys in the pros in the NFL? I think so.
Mm-hmm.
And they just this will be the second year under Coach Donald Williams, and they seem to be kind of hitting their stride and figuring it out. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens with them. Westfell with Coach Devin Ducote, may not have a big blue chipper like they have with Joel Rogers, but they always are very athletic and can do a lot of different things. Coach Ducote's mindset, of course, is defensive, but I'm kind of curious to see how this group evolves with what they've got.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
In District 8-4A, kind of on the outskirts of, but still in the 225, you've got a Lutcher program that's with a lot of the River Parish and Bayou Parish teams, but I know it's a program that you know a lot about. Every year,
they're going to be solid again. I mean, Coach Jenkins' son is finally he's going to be the starting quarterback this year. That's going to be a big deal, and that's he's been very capable in that role. And I generally find that sons of coaches do well when they have those opportunities. But you've got Rashad Sterling, who's committed to Houston over on the defensive side. He is a huge disruptor. If you think back to when they won the title a couple of years ago, he was such a linchpin for them. And most people don't realize they have several other guys who are back from that team too that are older and wiser. And I think they've kind of shuffled the deck maybe a little bit scheme wise, and they're going to be fun to watch too, I think.
Yeah.
Always
Yeah,
are.
I'm looking forward to them on a statewide level, what they can, and obviously the playoffs are a long way away, but what they do all season and where they are come playoff time. In 3A in the area, District 6 3A, you have the heavy hitters of U-High, Madison Prep, Parkview Baptist with Collegiate, Glen Oaks, Mentorship, and Port Allen back in the mix with those guys. Your thoughts on a group of teams that obviously those first 3 have recent dome experience and are all trying to fight to get back to it. What's the outlook in 2024 for some of those 3A teams around the capital area?
I think U-High, most people, a lot of people were asking about Catholic and Zachary in the preseason, at least like in the last 3 or 4 weeks. And as I pointed out to him, the school with the most current seniors committed is U-High. And that's not counting your Lamar Brown, who's an underclassman, and Emil Pecorello, the quarterback, is not committed yet. But, you've got guys like Zay Martin, the receiver, who's committed to Southeastern. The great lineman, he's really solid, John Hebert, who's going to Navy. And, one of my favorite basketball players, Trishad Bush, I wouldn't bet against him having a breakout year as a wide receiver. And then, of course, you have Keelan Moses, the LSU commitment everybody knows. And, because somebody asked me about him, and I said, yeah, he's a great player. But you know what? The last 2 years, they've had another player who had like 150 tackles because the other team was running away from Keelan Moses. Last year, that guy was Alec Haynes, and he's back. Now, Madison Prep's going to be interesting. Calvin Spears or Nick Spears has a great football pedigree. He just committed to Navy. But Tylen Johnson, who succeeded Zion Chris at quarterback, it's kind of hard to believe, but this is his 3rd year as a starter. They've got Ross Ackman back from J.S. Clark as their offensive coordinator, and he believes that, Tylen can be in line with some of the guys they have there to have Zion Chris type numbers. course, now, to be fair, physically he's not Zion. He's about 5'9", 5'10". Zion was about 6'2" or 6'3", but he's very elusive and he showed savvy from the time he took over as starting quarterback. So yeah, why not with those guys? I mean, they're going to be interesting to see how, it's going to be interesting to see how they do. With Parkview, of course, you'll have a new quarterback, and it looks like that's probably going to be Logan Sorrell, who moved over from Dunham. And you've got some other kids in the mix. You've got, let me see, I got to make sure I get the name right here, because like I told you, I have a cheat sheet with notes on names these days. Brock Como had over 1,000 yards receiving last year, so that's a nice security blanket for them. And they always have a decent amount of athletic ability, a lot of kids that played multiple sports. So it's going to be fun.
And similarly to Lutcher down with some of the River Parish, Bayou Parish teams, you've got a couple of schools, again, that I know you keep your eye on in the 225 area. Well, I guess a couple of schools in a couple of other districts with Donaldsonville and St. James down in 7-3A with Berwick and Patterson, and then Albany and Springfield out in 8-3A with Amite and some of those Tangipahoa Parish and on East schools. How much do you know early on about some of those four, and if any of those are kind of notable from a statewide level that fans need to kind of keep an eye on? Obviously, I mean, St. James is going to be talented again, but just
St. James is going to be talented again. Will they be talented enough to make it back to the Dome? I don't know that we can say that yet, but they always have talent. And whenever you have a program that's in that position where they've had success, I usually kind of give them a little bit of a bump to figure that they have a good chance at making a deep run again. I'd probably rank them first, but I'll be honest with you, Donaldsonville's kind of intriguing because you have Darnell Lee, who went over there from EA, and he's even told me this kind of reminds him of the situation he was in when he coached at Northwest, that the size of the school and everything else is very similar. They've really done a good job of getting the community rallying around them. Of course, they recently, in the last couple of years, got their artificial turf on the field that they share with Ascension Catholic. They've got a lot of good things going on, and they never have a shortage of athletes. I can't tell you specifically who might be a breakout player. I think, there a lot of stuff is being figured out there, but they could be somebody to watch. Albany and Springfield, that'll be interesting to see how that shakes out. Generally, that is, the Amite district, although some people have pushed them the last couple of years. It's a big step up for Springfield. So I'll be curious to see how they do. But all of those teams are worth watching.
In 2A, you have Baker, Capital, Dunham, Eastvale, Episcopal, Northeast, and Slaughter Community all in that 8-2A. Where obviously you have the great rivalry in Dunham and Episcopal, and you've had some years where Eastvale, as talented as they can be, has the ability to challenge those guys. Northeast has had some years as well. I mean, really on down the list, where as much as we kind of watch Dunham and Episcopal, everybody kind of has their year where they're up closer to the top of that district. What does it look like in 2024 in terms of, those top couple of teams that we're used to seeing make a couple of wins in the playoffs, and who their biggest challenger or challengers might be this year?
Right. Well, and, one of the things I talk about, there's two other players that I'll mention in a minute that I think are dynamic playmakers that people sometimes miss, but it just came out yesterday that Elijah Haven from Dunham is the number one recruit in the nation for 2027 as a quarterback. And I mean, he's the real deal. He's as good as it gets. He's a two-sport athlete, and I don't dismiss him as a basketball player. Some people do, but I've seen him play both sports. And but I mean, as a football player, you could see, as good as he was last year, and he was great, that there was room for growth. And it's going to be interesting to see how that evolves this year. He's going to have some new people around him, so that's going to be interesting to see how they integrate that. They do have a couple of transfers in, a running back, J.J. Harris, and a receiver, Jarvis Washington, who could factor into the mix. So you're just going to kind of have to see. And Dunham is one of those ones in 2A. You see that a lot where they mix and match between they play offense and they play defense. How many plays do they play here? Where do they go? And Episcopal is going to do what Episcopal does with Travis Bourgeois is their head coach. They've got 15 starters back. That's a darn good place to start. And Reed Chauvin rushed for over 1,000 yards last year and 20 touchdowns. And then on defense, Chase Crescent had over 100 tackles. So, I mean, those are two pretty good points and players to look at. Adding Slaughter is an intriguing point to this because they've kind of made some inroads the last couple of years. Obviously, for them, there's a real great natural rivalry there, possibility with them, Northeast and Eastville, being very, very close geographically. A lot of those kids grew up in each other's backyards. It's going to be interesting to see how they do. Baker is kind of rebuilding and retooling. Second year for this coaching program. When I talked to them about a month ago, they were pleased with the attendance and the participation in the off season. Last year, it kind of was sluggish and a little slow because they did change coaches, but the numbers are up a little bit. It'll be interesting to see if there's an upward progression for those guys, because the thing is, I think you still have Episcopal and Dunham at the top, but is there somebody who can make an upward progression this year? Would it be the newest incarnation at Eastville? And it might be. And or could it be one of these other guys? You never know. If somebody could upset the apple cart.
And last but not least, some great 1A teams in a couple of 1A districts around the Baton Rouge area. Actually, I mean, might as well start with 9-1A, where you have a reigning champion in Southern Lab, along with the great rivalry they've had for decades with Kentwood out east. And those two are joined by Central Private and Thrive Academy in 9-1A. I know the Kittens have a lot of key pieces to replace, but they're kind of similar to some other teams that you've talked about where they expect to win every year at this point. They were talking about it at the Superdome that they wanted to go win it again this year. So what do you see from those Kittens in that 9-1A group?
Well, I mean, they expect to win. And, one of the breakout players last year was Coach's son, Amarian Asbury, who, kind of an incredible story, reshaped his body and did a lot of things coming back from a very, very serious injury that took a couple of years to overcome. And he's now a Southern commitment, so the Jaguars are happy, and he's going to be happy to be there. Right now, I think, or the last time I talked to him, Jared Botley is in line to be the next quarterback. That's a key piece, but when you have a guy like Denham Hunt to throw to, who's a kind of a security blanket and a very, very fast guy, that helps. They have other receivers because on a team like this, you turn them around 1A, you turn them around, they play DB, they play wide receiver, and you never know who's going to step up and make a play. But the biggest thing, two big things for them, they returned 5 linemen, and several of those guys are two-way guys and they're standouts. And if those guys can stay healthy, that can give the rest of the offense time to mature and kind of to get their bearings. And they have a new defensive coordinator who's very well known around the Baton Rouge area, Lamar Thomas, who's been at multiple schools. He was actually a head coach at White Castle at one point. And again, he's very well respected, so that's a great get for them. And it'll be interesting to see how they go. Now, the other district with Ascension Catholic is going to be interesting too when you factor in Lowell Narcisse being the head coach at Ascension Catholic. He comes in with a scheme and a plan, and he's probably going to put the ball in the air a little more. But, the emphasis will be trying to get the ball again to Chad Elsie Jr., who was really one of the guys that I would say is one of the two most dynamic playmakers we have. Him and Kyrie Paul from Estruma, that a lot of people maybe don't know about. But Elsie, they may actually throw it to him a little more, and for good reason. They are having to retool their line, and it may take a little while. It's kind of the reverse deal where linemen buy your skill players a little time. The skill players may need to buy a little time for the linemen to fall in place to get the knowledge and experience, and also, new head coach, new system. But it'll be interesting to see how they do. You've got Pete Villia, who's taken over at East Iberville. He's a former UL player. Was at Plaquemine for a number of years, and kind of eager to get this head coaching job. So I'm kind of curious to see how that goes. It seems like they at least social media wise, have a lot of enthusiasm and are looking forward to the season. They always have their share of athletes. And, I think he's kind of looking to build and stay there for a while. Mark Brown at White Castle, they have a lot of kids back. Now, the key is, how far does Ascension Catholic come back to the pack, or do they? And how close to these other teams, whether it's East Iberville, White Castle, and you also have to add, we have a newbie in the mix in North Iberville. How do the rest of these guys, did they move closer like St. John? St. John made some strides last year. How close do they move to that group in the middle, and how close does everybody else move to Ascension Catholic? And is how much of a challenge is there? We got to see.
Yeah, I'm interested to see that North Iberville team too. It's one where we're all kind of waiting to see what exactly it looks like on some Friday nights, but I know they do have some talented young athletes there that I had a chance to see throughout the spring and summer. So it'll be fun to watch them, back one way or another.
Oh yeah, they've got some talented athletes, and they have probably Josh Gast is the head coach, but they have so many coaches on that staff with a wealth of experience who have been around. They've coached around the championship level. They had a couple of guys who left to take other positions, but it's kind of like a cradle of coaches revisited in one way or another. It's kind of like a comfort zone, bringing a team up through the JV ranks to get to varsity. So I think it's going to be fun to watch them play too, and fun to actually have games there.
Well, we've certainly been spoiled by a lot of fantastic teams and players in recent years, a lot of state champions around the Baton Rouge area, and I think there are a great number of contenders again this year. And Robin, I appreciate you taking some time in August to kind of lay out the landscape around town.
All righty. Well, I appreciate it. Hopefully I provided some insight.
Absolutely. Always. Again, she's Robin Fambrough from The Advocate, and Jarrett Rosa from Louisiana versus all y'all. Thanks to Robin for her time, and thanks to everyone for checking out the video and learning a little bit more about some of these schools and young men excited for their upcoming seasons.
Well, thank you so much for having me.